Hey everybody! So, time again for my video where I check up on Georgia Tech's opponents that have been coming up and even that we've played. I like keeping tabs on the ones we played to kind of see how good they are. And, not a very good week for Georgia Tech's strength of schedule yet again. So, let's start out with, Colorado. Apparently, they put back in Caden Salter, which I said I don't get why they even benched him at first. I don't really. That was a knee jerk reaction. Losing to us is not that bad or embarrassing, and he didn't have like that horrible of a performance to where you got to go to the third string quarterback. I never really understood that. I never really got that. I don't. I think that was a poor coaching move. Whoa, surprise, surprise from Deion Sanders. Doesn't know what he's doing. So they wound up putting Salter back in, and after going through the rigmarole in the locker room with apparently everybody rallying around what that guy's name was, Staub, that nobody had ever heard of, they rallied around him. The locker room was so freaking excited to have Staub as their quarterback. Well, now they're back to Salter. So what does that spell for Colorado this in the future? I'm just going to go ahead and predict the rest of their schedule. I think they lose to BYU, TCU, Iowa State, Utah, probably Arizona. They're about to go on a big, long stretch here. Maybe West Virginia they can win. Maybe Arizona State. They'll definitely beat Kansas State. Kansas State's really bad. This is like a 3 or 4 win season here that I'm looking at for Colorado. So they don't know what they're doing. Deion, who knows how long he's going to be there. Probably not that long. But it's funny to kind of peek in on Colorado, even though they're not relevant to us at all. At least ACC opponents you can kind of look at to, see like what the standings are and stuff like that or whatever. But Colorado, just kind of funny to look at them and see how they're floundering. Let's take a look at Clemson now. Oh, good Lord. They got their ass whooped by Syracuse this past weekend, dude. Good Lord, man. This is freaking tanking our strength of schedule. What a huge win we had last week against Clemson. And we tore down the goalposts and did the whole thing again. And then they go out and lay a complete egg. I was cheering for them the rest of the way, really, because I wanted that win to be good. It's the same thing that happened to Florida State, dude. Now they're 1-3, got blown out by Syracuse and freaking Fran Brown of all people, dude. That's what really pisses me off too, is that Fran Brown gets a huge win there over Clemson at home. At home, it's one thing to go on the road and lose to Georgia Tech. It's one thing to lose to even LSU at home. I mean, they're top whatever team in the SEC. Like, I get it, but now you're getting blown out at home by Syracuse. And look, they could be in give up mode. I don't know. There's been tons of talk about Dabo, and the excuse making. I talked about this in the post game of Temple. We won and still didn't make any excuses for the mistakes that we made. Meanwhile, Dabo and Cade Klubnik come out after the game and they're making all kind of excuses. Well, Dabo says, I don't understand why we're held to such a high standard. Yeah, okay, Dabo. You set the standard yourself by winning so much, and now you've fallen off. You're washed up. And damn, it feels like it just really sucks that, this happens right after we finally get our win over them. It's huge. Like, our strength of schedule took a huge hit there with Clemson turned out to be suck. They're really the laughing stock of the country now. I mean, you can't defend your home against Syracuse. I don't even know what to say, dude. It was dominant, too. Like, this game was not ever really in question. I thought that, silly me, I thought they'd win this game and maybe even cover. Like, I thought, they come out. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Maybe I was coping. I don't know. But it really, really hurts my feelings that Clemson just completely laid an egg there against Syracuse. Really unacceptable. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that anymore. And now Fran Brown gets a huge freaking win. As if his head wasn't big enough. Anyway, let's move on. We got our upcoming game against Wake Forest this week. They had a bye week, so really not much to talk about that. I'll cover this game, in a pregame video. I'll definitely be talking about that. So just I guess keep an eye out for that. But up until this point in the year, they had a struggle bus win against Kennesaw State, beat somebody called Western Carolina, and then lost to NC State, which was a surprisingly, to me at least, competitive game. They don't look completely, inept. So they did lose at home to NC State, and they didn't look absolutely, just pitiful, as kind of they did against Kennesaw State. I mean, you only put up 10 against Kennesaw State. It's like surprising that you're able to put up 24 even on NC State. So I don't know, but we'll see how this turns out. This game turns out. We go to Wake Forest. Not like it's a scary place to play at all, but my kind of first initial thought. Obviously, we should win. We're favored by 2 scores on the road against an ACC opponent. So, hey, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'll preview this game this week. So, let's take a look at Virginia Tech. God, hey, look, they got on the board this week, 38-6 over Wofford. I guess they have a interim coach. Nobody watched this game. It was on ACCNX/ESPN Plus, whatever that means. Nobody watched this game. Did you? No. So I'm much more interested to see how they perform against a real team next week, NC State. As far as if they get a bump for being an interim, because obviously we know that Brent Key was an interim and he turned that team around lickety split. So sometimes that can be the magic juice, but they did turn around and get a win against Wofford, which they probably would have done anyway. So can't really figure out anything off of that. All right, Duke. So crazy game against NC State, in which they wound up with a comfortable win. Now, this was a surprising result to a lot of people. Maybe not Sea-Dog though. I actually saw this one coming. This is a classic ACC upset game. Really saw this coming from a mile away. We called this on the ACC show. Both me and Pete picked Duke to win this game. Pete probably picked it just because he hates NC State, but I totally saw this as like a bounce back for Duke. They're not a dead team. They're not a bad team. I still, like a lot of people, maybe a lot of Tech fans even looked at NC State, and this is where I'll kind of talk about NC State too. A lot of people looked at NC State and thought, this is okay. They're no longer, the best team on our schedule. I still think they are for a few reasons. Syracuse, Duke, and NC State are the 3 teams that could, we could lose to. Barring some kind of stupid, like, game where we just choke it away that we shouldn't. You know what I mean? So, as far as that, this game was 2 competent, like, offenses when they get going. And obviously they both put up a couple of scores. And Duke, we hadn't really seen, their offense shine kind of yet this year, at least in a game that matters. But they are a capable team, and they could totally upset us. They had they defended their territory here against NC State, who was undefeated and is no longer. So who knows? But I think both of these teams have a very real threat of kind of upsetting Georgia Tech. When I'm going down our schedule, I'm kind of looking at like, okay, who can we take a loss to? Because I don't expect us to go undefeated. I really don't. And it could be one of these 2 teams. And especially because we go to both of these places. Now, Brent Key plays pretty well on the road historically, especially against ranked ACC teams, but neither of these are ranked, so I don't know. But, I'm definitely watching out for these 2 teams in specific to upset us potentially this season. Not that I want that. I just don't expect us to go undefeated. So I'm kind of trying to look and see who could possibly pull it off. Now, the next team here, Syracuse, talked about them a little bit when it came to Clemson. I would say Syracuse is our new strongest team, but unfortunately their quarterback goes down in this game. And, I mean, even after they beat Clemson, I still think we're a better team than Syracuse, but Unfortunately, their quarterback goes down to a season-ending Achilles injury, and I hate Syracuse and Fran Brown, but you never want to see that happen. So that really sucks for them. Obviously, or maybe not so obviously, I'd like to play them at full strength. I don't want to be a team just because they are missing their best player or whatever the case. But he was having a hell of a game, having his way with Clemson, and unfortunately has that season-ending injury. So, they could still be a feisty team. I don't know their backup quarterback situation. They had the game well in hand by the time that he got hurt. So, just a really unfortunate situation. I'm not so sure, about that, but I guess we'll see what they got coming up. They got Duke coming up here this week, so I'll be really interested to see that. That's another two teams that play each other now. So, and I've got NC State schedule pulled up here too, but I kind of already talked about them. So, in summary, I can't talk about Georgia or Pitt or Boston College either because they were on a bye this week. Georgia, of course, has the big game against Alabama coming up, and be freaking really funny if they lost that. So, be on the lookout for that. Roll Tide. But no, I haven't had the chance to I don't know, but NC State, they're just I'm looking at these three teams: Duke, NC State, Syracuse, as potential upsets for Georgia Tech. For the Syracuse game, I think that's probably the least likely. Like I said, they lost their quarterback. Also, we get them at home on homecoming, and we always play crazy out of our minds on homecoming. We're undefeated on homecoming under Brent Key, and that we've had ranked ACC opponents and at home, some good opponents at home on homecoming under Key, and we always really get up for that game. So, no doubt in my mind, we'll win that game. Plus, we have the revenge factor. Not so much with Duke. Duke has, they always lose us, so they got some reason to want revenge, and so does NC State. So these are kind of the two teams that I'm looking at to maybe potentially get the upset. And I don't like talking about it. Obviously, I want to go 12-0. And if we play to our ability every week, then we will go 12-0. We're capable of beating every single one of these teams. But will it happen? I'm going to go ahead and say no. So I'm just going to keep track of these teams, and I'm going to go ahead and keep track of these teams and talk about them and kind of keep tabs on who I think is the most competent opponents. Wake Forest is not among that list. Spoiler alert for my preview of that game upcoming this week. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.